Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing us another fantasy football video. In this one, I'll be going over 5 players that I would be looking to sort of sell high on ahead of week 3. Again, these aren't necessarily players that you have to get rid of, but they are players that I think are overvalued right now relative to what they're going to do for you guys the rest of the season. For me, trading is one of the most fun things to do in fantasy. I try and get trades done like basically every single week in my leagues. It's one of the things I do right after waivers runs. I go through and look at every single team and see if there's any trades that make sense. So definitely love doing all that. It's really fun for me to make these videos. All this stuff is stuff that I'm acting on as well, and hopefully you guys find it useful. So I'm gonna get into it here. If you guys do end up with any specific start sit or trade questions or start sit questions, I guess, just let me know in the comments below. I love helping you guys out there. Interacting with you guys is a lot of fun, and part of why I like doing this. So yeah, hopefully you guys find this useful, and let's just get into it. Just starting things off, I think it's pretty wise to at least consider kicking the tires on a trade of Kenneth Walker. The efficiency was great on Sunday, right? You saw him get 13 carries, break 100 yards, had a long touchdown run on 3rd and goal from the 19, which, by the way, is the first time that's happened, like, ever. So I think I mean that, by the way. I'm pretty sure I saw a stat where it was the first 3rd and goal from the 19 or further out that resulted in a touchdown run. Like, that just doesn't happen. That's not a reliable way of scoring here. And, you know, we love seeing that, but this is still a clear running back by committee. Zach Charbonnet and him are basically splitting drives, so you're going to see some weeks where he gets more carries, other weeks where Charbonnet gets more carries, and it's just going to be dependent on which of their drives end up lasting longer. But in general, like, this is a mediocre offense in Seattle, and now you've got a 50-50 split in the backfield between a mediocre offense. So, like, just how many points are there available for this all backfield to give you every single week? Pair that with the fact that, again, you're not going to see the efficiency you just got this last week every single week. You saw him average over 8 yards per carry, score a touchdown, still barely a top 10 running back last week. And that's really what you wanted Kenneth Walker to be week in and week out, is you thought he could be a guy that would go out there and put up top 10 numbers on a weekly basis. And you need basically everything to break right for that to happen unless he somehow takes back a full workhorse role over this offense. I don't see that happening. They've been very vocal about sort of having a plan for keeping him healthy. I think a big part of that plan is using Zach Charbonnet more. I think it makes a lot of sense to at least consider trading him. I think if you want to hold for one more week after a good matchup against the Saints, you could do that. But again, I think people are just really excited to be right back on the Walker bandwagon, and I do think there is still reason to be concerned there. This one's kind of sad, but I think it makes sense to at least consider trading Jakuri, Kraft, Merritt right now, or otherwise known as Bill. This is just sort of like a sell the news event for me. You've got obviously the injury to Austin Eckler. Rest in peace there, Eckler. I'm going to miss you. You're probably done, honestly, in the NFL. It really sucks. But with JCM, he's going to be a part-time player in this offense, even with that injury. We've seen for years now that the Commanders just don't want to employ a workhorse running back. Like, they're certainly going to use multiple backs in this offense. Chris Rodriguez will likely get elevated from the practice squad. He'll be active on game day, and then Jeremy McNichols is probably going to operate as the passing down back. So I don't think Bill is like a special enough player to really warrant them changing their mind on that. It's not like he's just light years better than the other backfields they have in the offense. They're not just going to give him 80% of the snaps like you sort of would hope with this injury here. So just because he's talented, he's going to need to make up for his limited opportunities with incredible efficiency, and I don't really see that happening. He feels really similar to me like Isaiah Pacheco, where he's technically the starter in the offense, but you really just can't consider playing him because you've got Kareem Hunt in Kansas City. I think you're going to see Jakuri Chris Rodriguez come in and get some short yardage work. You're going to see Jeremy McNichols come in and get some passing down work, sort of like what you have with Brashard Smith over in Kansas City. Like, you know, good offense, but it's going to be 3 backs. You'll probably see Merritt at like 40 to 50% of the snaps. Not going to catch a lot of passes. You're going to need him to score a touchdown for you to be happy. So he's basically like a low-end running back 2 option at best for me, and I think people are really excited about him, so I would definitely consider moving him right now. This one sucks, but I think Emeka Egbuka is actually a really wise trade away candidate right now. I think it's maybe even a hot take. I think people are super stoked about what they've seen so far, but just watching him play, I don't think he really looks all that special. I think he's a good player, and he's probably going to lead this team in targets the rest of the way, but there's a lot of things that I would say are unsustainable. Obviously, 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks, that's not going to happen. He's not going to finish with 25 receiving touchdowns, so that's going to fall off a little bit here. You're also seeing him with a sub 20% target share, right? So for as great as he's been, you haven't really seen him command like 25% of the targets. You saw Mike Evans absolutely dominate targets this last week, even with Derek Stingley on him. So Evans even could be the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense still. And he's just really not getting open on a regular basis, just per some like advanced metrics. When you look at like his route win rate, he was 3rd on the team behind Evans and Shepard last week. So like, it's not like he was special by any means this last week. On top of that, you do have Chris Godwin coming back at some point, so you're going to see the target share get even more widely distributed. Jalen McMillan will be back at some point as well, probably for the fantasy playoffs. Just adding more and more target competition here. I do think Egbuka is still a good player, and I think he's going to be a good NFL player for a long time, but I just don't think he's going to finish anywhere near a top 10 wide receiver, and he is the wide receiver 10 right now. Again, the touchdown regression is going to come. You're going to get more target competition. I think it's wise to at least consider selling high, because I think in general people are like, wow, I've got Egbuka, I've got a top 10 wide receiver the rest of the year. I don't really see that being the case. I'd rather have Tedero McMillan than him. I think there's a lot of guys that are valued quite a bit less that I would just much rather have. So at least take a look on that if you agree with me there. AJ Brown, this is certainly not selling high, but I think it is wise to consider selling him here. I'm just kind of terrified of the Eagles' passing offense. I don't really like rostering players in fantasy where if the team gets their way, that player isn't good for fantasy, right? Like what the Eagles want to happen is what's happened the last couple of weeks, where they can just lean on their running game and defense and not have to push the ball downfield and just win the game because they have the best offensive line and probably the best defense in the NFL. And because of how that's going, it seems like AJ Brown just looks disinterested. I don't really blame him, right? He's just not a focal point of the offense. They don't need him to win games. And, certainly there's going to be some spike weeks going forward. Like AJ Brown's too talented of a player to not have a couple games here and there where he goes for like 5 for 150 and a touchdown. And that's great, but the problem with that is that keeps him in your lineup every single week. So you're going to eat all of these games where he's just not important to the offense. Really, the reality is, like, what separates him from a guy like George Pickens right now, right? George Pickens is a guy that's probably going to have relatively low volume because he's the wide receiver too, but he's going to be an explosive player on like a per touch basis, and that gives him a weekly ceiling that makes you want to put him in your lineup, and that's basically what AJ Brown is, right? So AJ Brown feels like a boom or bust wide receiver 3 to me. Probably going to finish inside the top 24 at the position or something, just because he's going to have a couple spike weeks, but his consistency is going to be in the garbage, right? So you're going to be feeling a lot worse than what his season-long numbers end up actually being, just because you're going to get probably one great game every 4, and then you're going to suck the other 3 weeks, and that's not an effective way to win fantasy, right? So I think you can still get a lot for him. I think you could probably consider trading him for, like, I would rather have Tedero McMillan than AJ Brown. I know I've mentioned McMillan both times here, but that's the level of guy I'd be willing to move off of Brown for. I think you could go get Ladd McConkey for AJ Brown, maybe Brian Thomas. I think that's the kind of trade you could still make, and I don't think it would be something that'll hurt you at all. So I definitely should at least consider it. I know it's selling low, but the name value still gives you quite a bit of value there. And one tight end I wanted to bring into this list, Tucker Kraft's the guy I wanted to talk about. And I know tight end's a wasteland, right? So if you want to hold on to Tucker Kraft, I totally get it, just because it's really tough to find anybody that you can start on a weekly basis. And it does feel like Kraft is going to be a guy that you could just sort of lock into your lineup the rest of the way and be okay with. And, Kraft is a talented player. I think he's probably going to finish the year as a fringe top 5 guy by the end of the season. But the problem is the Packers just spread the ball around too much for me to love starting him every single week. Even without Jaden Reed, you've still got Matthew Golden, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks will be involved. You've got Williams there. You're also going to be getting Christian Watson back at some point. Maybe Jaden Reed back by the fantasy playoffs as well, right? There are a lot of pass catchers in this offense, not to mention like Luke Musgrave gets involved. And the reality is this is a team that wants to run the ball with Josh Jacobs. They've a dominant defense, right? So they're probably going to be winning a lot of games, be able to lean on that running game. And that just makes it really difficult for me to expect there to be enough passing volume to reliably expect any more than like 4 to 5 targets for Tucker Kraft every single week. And what that means is that you're going to see him as a guy that's going to catch 2 to 4 passes every single week. And for him to then be good for fantasy, you either need him to average 25 yards per reception like he did last week, or you need him to score a touchdown. And I think really week 1 is probably going to be more indicative of what we see the rest of the way, where he gets like 4 targets, does get a look near the goal line. So if he catches it, you're okay. You get a touchdown. And if he doesn't, you're going to be sad. And that's typically how every single tight end in fantasy is, right? If you're not playing McBride, Bowers, or Warren, pretty much, you're basically looking at a guy that you hope he scores a touchdown, and if he doesn't, you're sad. If he does, you're happy. And to me, that Tucker Kraft falls right into that category. So it just feels like you could probably still get a lot for Tucker Kraft, who's the tight end 1 on the season. And I don't think he's really a tier above the guys that you'd have by streaming the position. So if you have him, I would at least consider it, because I think there are some people that are really bought in. One of my leagues, he went for 70 fab earlier this week. So people are really bought in. So I think it makes a lot of sense to consider him. Definitely a guy that I would at least see what you can get for, because I don't think he's going to finish nearly what he's been doing so far. So that'll do it for the sell high candidates this week. Up next, I'll get into some starts and sits. I will cover every single game this week, go over every single fantasy relevant player, and just tell you how I view them this week in fantasy. I'll split that video into 2 videos covering the first 8 games in the first video and the second 8 games in the second video, so stay tuned for that one. That one will come out tomorrow morning, so make sure you guys don't miss that. Of course, if you haven't already, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. There's going to be 5 videos every single week. I'll be here all season long to help you guys out. So if you're subscribed to the channel, you get access to all of that, and hopefully we can win some championships together. So I appreciate you guys. If you made it this far, give the video a thumbs up, and I will catch you guys with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.